Getting this close without the mask scares me more than a little. And when I'm scared, I like to talk. Even though the room is pitch black and the shades are so thick they'd keep out July. Even though she promised not to look. Trust, especially in a thing as weird as ours, it's tough to come by. Today on the Comic Book Report, Spider-Man by Joe Kelly Omnibus from Marvel Comics. Stick around and check it out. Greetings, webheads. My name is Dominic, and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're back in the world of Spider-Man. We're looking at the Joe Kelly Omnibus today, and this is one I have been really eager to review. I know for me as a reader, it's always interesting to get a curated by kind of omnibus, where it's just all the issues from a specific creator. Sometimes those issues are consecutive, sometimes they're broken up. Like I know I read the Spider-Man by Chip Zdarsky omnibus on this channel not too long ago. At any rate, when I heard that Joe Kelly omnibus was forthcoming, I was definitely intrigued. Most of these issues I had not had the opportunity to read before picking up this book. And after completing the book, I have a ton of thoughts. Before we jump into the review though, I would like to say a huge thank you to our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, and just mention, if you want to pick up any of your own comic book collected editions, maybe even this omnibus, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link to them in the video's description, and at checkout, you can even use my discount code, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of any of your prospective orders. Please note if you do use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you for considering, and now let's get started with today's Marvel Omnibus review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The comics in this volume were written primarily by Joe Kelly and illustrated primarily by Chris Bocciolo, Phil Jimenez, Marco Cacchetto, and more. The comics in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning as early as 1996. The volume itself collects The Amazing Spider-Man issues 575 and 576, 595 through 599, 606 and 607, 611, 617, and 625, along with Non-Stop Spider-Man issues 1 through 5, Savage Spider-Man issues 1 through 5, Marvel Fanfare issues 2 and 3, Web Spinners Tales of Spider-Man issues 7 through 9, and material from Amazing Spider-Man Extra issues 1 and 3, Amazing Spider-Man issues 577, 600, 612, 634 through 637, 647, and Spider-Man Grim Hunt: The Kraven Saga. And finally, this is an oversized hardcover edition with beautiful glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 880 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first dedicated look at the front dust jacket cover for the Spider-Man by Joe Kelly Omnibus, and right from the top, I love this image. I believe it comes courtesy of Ken Lashley. Just a really striking Spider-Man here. I will go ahead and throw up a quick thumbnail of the direct market cover as well, just so you can get a comparison shot. For me personally, I definitely am in favor of this standard edition, but I think both are quite good. And for the spine, we have an absolutely huge amount of red and blue, Spider-Man's premier colors. We have the Marvel Omnibus logo, a field of blue with some webs there, Spider-Man by Joe Kelly, some of the other creators there, and a little image of Spider-Man at the bottom. I should say if you get the direct market cover, there might be a different image on the bottom of the spine as well, but other than those two differences, both editions should be identical. Making our way to the back cover of this dust jacket, we do have more red, blue, and white. We have Spider-Man there in a kind of full saturated red. We have a couple other supporting characters there, some notable villains. We have a little bit of a blurb description of the book, and then the contents of this omnibus, age rating, pricing information, Marvel logo, all pretty standard fare there. But yeah, this is the back cover. Okay, now as I like to do with these review videos, I will do one final moment to examine the exteriors. This time I will do the dust jacket one more time, this time showing you those interior flaps as well, just so you can get a look at all the detail work that goes into this. Again, for the dust jacket design, I loved the front cover. Everything else to me is just sort of okay. I think the spine is also pretty striking, but the graphic design didn't move me maybe as much as I might have hoped. Again, I am a huge fan of the cover. Everything else was just a solid okay for me. Under the dust jacket, though, I was really thrilled to see what we have stamped here. We have kind of a Spider-Man, almost like a long exposure shot that goes through like an action sequence. We have some panel layouting there. It's just a really interesting move. Obviously, a lot more red and black and white and blue. But yeah, it is a full like wraparound image, though. We don't have any text here. It's just the image printed on board. But again, I think it's a really nice design work, and it's just an added piece of art. And now that we're finishing out the exteriors, I did want to go ahead and transition and spend a moment examining this book's binding. So as I mentioned at the top, I do believe it is sewn binding if I'm not mistaken. Now this is after I have read it through one complete time. As you can see, there's not much of an eye in my collection. Maybe it'll relax even further upon subsequent reading. Because of that, the pages didn't lay down perfectly. There is a little bit of gutter loss. Nothing too critical. I was always able to push down the pages and read, but just worth noting. Okay, and now we can go ahead and jump into the book proper. After the end pages, we have an interesting title page that has the Savage Spider-Man on it. More on that in a little bit. We have after that a 2-page kind of creator mapped breakdown page that also has some publication information along the bottom. These 2 pages really show all the issues included, who created them, and this is really what we have in lieu of a proper paged table of contents. We don't really always have that, especially with modern runs, so I wasn't surprised not to see that here. After that, we jump right into the first issue of the collection. There is no essay or prologue or things. We just go right into the issues. And before I begin speaking more specifically about the plot details and things, I would like to set up a little bit more context about how this book is put together. As far as I can tell, everything is mapped fairly chronologically based on release, with the exception of the stories from the 90s to at the very back of this collection after Savage Spider-Man and everything else. I believe those are just some of Joe Kelly's earliest work on Spider-Man, if I'm not mistaken. It does feel a little bit out of place. I know I mentioned earlier they had issues as early as like 96 in this omnibus, and that's where that all takes place at the very end. Everything else, I believe, proceeds in chronological order. Now, a large chunk of this book has issues from kind of the brand new day era of Spider-Man. If you're not really overly versed in that period, it all occurred after the One More Day story arc that basically soft rebooted the character, played with the continuity for him a bit, shattered long-standing relationships, and reset the status quo for our amazing spider hero. Now, that was obviously a controversial kind of editorial choice, but the Brand New Day era gets a lot of mixed reviews. I, for one, have really liked what I've read from this period. We have kind of a think tank of a lot of different creators, both writers and artists, attached to this period, and Joe Kelly is amongst them. And that's, again, where a lot of the issues in this omnibus take place. We do have stuff that occurs after that, like in the case of the miniseries Non-Stop Spider-Man and its direct follow-on Savage Spider-Man. But again, most of the issues occurred during that Brand New Day era. I bring this up for a few reasons. One, to kind of set the tone as to where this takes place, but also to bring up another point which I've heard people talk about whenever I bring up this omnibus, and that is because we are solicited to get a Spider-Man Brand New Day Omnibus Volume 2 coming out, I believe, right now in January of 2026. If that book, or when that book comes out, it does appear we will get some double dipping, maybe even some extensive double dipping between that collection and this one here. So I've heard a lot of people say, what is the point of this collection? Shouldn't I just wait for Brand New Day? What do you think? And I've kind of saved it for this review. I think in general, why is this omnibus a solid release, or why should you consider picking it up? I think a couple pros for picking up this omnibus is if you're a fan of Joe Kelly, if you like him as a comic book creator, or you like more curated curated omnibus editions that maybe don't go through everything sequentially, but follow a given theme or idea or creator, obviously this is a great route to go. I know I mentioned I also read and reviewed like the Spider-Man by Chip Zdarsky omnibus, so this is another fun one to have up there that's a buy collection. But this one doesn't really include kind of interstitial issues that sometimes occur between some of Joe Kelly's stories, and that's where I think maybe the Brand New Day Omnibus Volume 2 might have a bit of an edge. I do think that this also edges out because we do get Non-Stop Spider-Man and Savage Spider-Man in oversized hardcover format, and I frankly have no idea if we'll ever see those stories in another omnibus down the line. Some really engaging reads there. So again, Marvel kind of presents us a choice of how we'd like to proceed with many of these issues in the omnibus format. I think knowing what I know now, having read this cover to cover, I will say I really did enjoy this omnibus. I had a lot of fun with it. However, the kind of reader I'm at, and because I loved so much that occurred during Brand New Day by Joe Kelly, I think I will prefer to read in sequence with a Brand New Day omnibus. But that's not to shortchange what we have here, so let's go ahead and jump into the story itself. The first story arc that's presented in this omnibus is one involving Spider-Man's villain, Hammerhead. If you're not familiar with him, he does have a very hard and oftentimes large head. He's kind of a mobster, seedy, kind of street-level supervillain for Spider-Man. I know every so often you have these high-flying, colorful supervillains for Spider-Man, but he also has a collection of villains that are kind of mob boss street crime level, kind of crime lords, like Kingpin or Mr. Negative or Hammerhead or Tombstone or kind of these sort of characters, and that's who we have here. Basically, Hammerhead gets an upgrade. He becomes enhanced so that his Hammerhead and his abilities are augmented, making him much more of a fearsome threat for Spider-Man. So the first arc really has to do with Hammerhead, his upgrades, and Spider-Man trying to stop him. A fun little story with art, I believe, by Chris Bocciolo, definitely a recognizable style. After that, we just jump from story to story here. I'm not going to include every single story in this omnibus. I'll leave some mystery to be solved by others. But the next notable story for me was the American Son story. This is a heavily kind of Norman Osborn, Harry Osborn story. It takes place during the Dark Reign era in the Marvel Universe, where Norman Osborn is in a huge position of power. We have a Dark Avengers, and it basically involves Harry Osborn, who initially wants to have nothing to do with his father. He finds out he may be a dad-to-be and wants to get closer with his dad's organization to find things that he believes will help his future family. And essentially, Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, is trying to stop Harry from getting caught up in his father's shenanigans. It ends up being a really heated sense of conflict for Peter and Harry and just kind of everyone involved. He ends up infiltrating the current Avengers compound, disguised as the basically the Avengers Spider-Man, who is, I believe, Matt Gargan with the Venom symbiote. Anyway, Spider-Man infiltrates this organization and tries to get intel for Harry and try to save him, and he gets caught, and there just huge battles ensue. This was a fun one for me overall. I really like a good Green Goblin story, and you definitely have that. You have a lot of the father issues too here. I know that both Harry and Norman have an interesting legacy with Green Goblin, so it's fun to see their dynamics at play. After that, we have a couple issues that basically bring Black Cat back into the fold, and we kind of rekindle the Spider-Man Black Cat relationship. I thought this was fun. I really do enjoy Black Cat. I feel like I'm reading more and more of that character between the Jed MacKay run and just her appearances throughout the years in Spider-Man, and I really do have a fondness for that character and her interesting dynamic with Spider-Man and certainly with Peter Parker. So it was fun seeing her in this omnibus. This is a period of time I'm not used to seeing Black Cat around, so these issues for me were of particular note. After that story, though, eventually we get over to the story involving the Rhino, and for me, this was one of the omnibus's greatest hits. I believe this is during the kind of gauntlet period leading into Grim Hunt, where basically Spider-Man is sort of led into all of these crazy battles that eventually start to wear and break him down before the Grim Hunt happens, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But basically, there is a new Rhino who's been sort of indoctrinated and has delusions of grandeur, and he's terrorizing everyone, particularly the old Rhino. He wants the old Rhino to don his skin again and battle him for essentially the mantle of being Rhino. The old Rhino, though, has gone on to find love and basically has retired his criminal personality. Spider-Man gets involved and ultimately urges the Rhino to kind of do what's best, and we have a really tragic set of circumstances here. Again, this is a spoiler review, so I'll just go ahead and say it. Essentially, the old Rhino begins doing these kind of terrorist attacks, and in one of these attacks, the old Rhino's love or wife or fiance or whatever is killed. And in her, like, dying in the Rhino's arms, he basically swears revenge, and he doesn't forgive Spider-Man, and he gets his Rhino costume and just annihilates the new Rhino. This, to me, story-wise, was one of the most compelling. I think it was one of the best written by Joe Kelly. It's tense, it's tragic, it has great action, and it was really evocative and interesting. Honestly, a ton of just feels as well. I had a lot of feelings reading that story arc, and just quite good. Jumping around a bit now, I do want to talk about some of the later story arcs, like the Grim Hunt. Basically involves Kraven's family trying to resurrect him, and to do that, they basically launch an all-out war on anyone bearing the kind of spider name or emblem or costuming. We find out that they're assisted by Madam Web, who's been kidnapped and forced to kind of help give intel for the Kraven family or Kravinoff family, and basically a bunch of these spider-like heroes or characters like the Spider Women or whatever are all getting caught up in this web, for lack of a finer term. But we find that this all really kicks off when Kane, the kind of failed or rejected mutated Spider-Man clone, comes bloodied and beaten to the doorstep of Peter Parker, basically saying we're being hunted. I thought that was such an amazing opening. The art here as well changes to be a bit more graphic and gritty, and I think it really fit the tone exceptionally well. Spider-Man at this point has gone through these gauntlets of physical, emotional issues and villain battles, and he's just run ragged. And here he is trying to save the day, figure out what's going on, and stop this resurrection of Kraven the Hunter. He fails to stop it, though. Kraven is resurrected, if a little bit imperfectly. It looks at first like the Kane clone of Spider-Man is murdered at one point. Spider-Man himself goes on a kind of path of vengeance, and he gets really furious. And we have kind of a sequel fight for Kraven and Spider-Man. There's a lot of throwbacks to Kraven's Last Hunt, which is, of course, probably the most prolific Kraven story out there. Definitely a huge sense of conflict and stake in this one, and another huge highlight in this collection. For me, as a reader, I think the Rhino story and this here with the Grim Hunt was the peak of this book. I absolutely loved it. Couldn't wait to finish the storyline, burn through page after page. Absolutely incredible storytelling. Sometime after that, we do get to Nonstop Spider-Man and its direct sequel, Savage Spider-Man. That's a really fun story. In Nonstop, we basically have Spider-Man trying to unravel this mystery where these smart kind of minority college kids are getting their brains or intelligence sucked away, and we don't really know why at first, but it has to do with Baron Zemo, and Spider-Man's just on a hunt to find him, figure out what's going on, or he's not trying to find him initially, he doesn't know who's behind it, but basically Spider-Man never stops. That's where you get the title. The art is really kinetic and interesting. I think this might also be Chris Bocciolo, if I'm not mistaken. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And that leads into a cliffhanger moment, and then I believe that series was canceled, but it was picked up with a new artist or artist team for Savage Spider-Man. Basically, a lot of things happen. Peter Parker is basically having his brain sucked out, but because of his rare kind of genes, he ends up mutating into a human spider hybrid before becoming a hyper-intelligent version of just Spider-Man. Anyway, they ultimately stop this horrible, evil think tank. He stops Baron Zemo, and you have the two miniseries coming to a really epic conclusion. This was a fun story as well. I heard a lot of positive press about Nonstop Spider-Man and Savage Spider-Man, and while those stories were excellent, they didn't sell me quite as hard as the Gauntlet era stories and the Grim Hunt, which again for me were my top of the heap. At the very back, we do have those 90s stories, which in one case is a Hulk, Wolverine, and light Spider-Man Ghost Rider story. That was all pretty fun. We had the Wendigo show up again, so that was interesting. And then we have these kind of small issues that deal with Peter Parker back in high school and going to his senior prom. He gets caught up in all this interpersonal drama between him and Flash Thompson, and Flash Thompson's ex-girlfriend and his girlfriend at the paper, and it's just really high school again, but it was a fun throwback. This, like I said, was written around the 90s, but that was pretty fun. And after we finish, I believe, those 3 issues at the back with the prom story, we do have the extras at the back of the omnibus. Now, the extras for this Omni are a pretty sizable chunk, but maybe not the content I was overall hoping for. We do have a full variant cover art gallery, or a pretty full one. I did love this. I was hoping for this, expecting this, and it did not disappoint. We have some really great covers back here, a lot of really cool covers with the Savage Spider-Man, the kind of mutated human hybrid, and just some other great covers. Love seeing a good cover art gallery like that. But after that point, we really just have a couple kind of production images or penciling work. I would have loved to see like an afterward essay or something more substantial written by Joe Kelly. I thought that would have been a cool way to tee up or finish this collection. And we didn't really get that here. Again, it's not a huge letdown. I'm still happy with the extras we got. They were generous with them, but a little bit of an essay or kind of a reflection by Kelly would have been a really welcome inclusion for me for extras. But that really brings us to the end of Spider-Man by Joe Kelly Omnibus. One more thing I should say as I'm wrapping up the book is just that I believe currently, like either right now or forthcoming, Joe Kelly was back and on the pages of Amazing Spider-Man. I'm not sure if that's why Marvel decided to release this curated omnibus collecting his early works on Spider-Man. Like I said, he's back on Amazing Spider-Man as the lead writer now, and again, people that want to get a feel for his earlier Spidey stuff, this is another great reason to pick up this omnibus. I'm optimistic for the future of the Amazing Spider-Man. I know there's been a lot of back and forth in recent years, but again, I'm hopeful. I think that Kelly is someone who definitely understands what makes Spidey work. The humor, the drama, the tragedy, the fun, all of it's here, and I really enjoyed going through this work. And while I think a lot of people might be passing on this omnibus in favor of something like the Brand New Day omnibus, I do think there are still a lot of great selling points for this omnibus specifically. Like I said, I had a lot of fun with it, but the choice is, as always, up to you. And on my end, I think the only thing left to do is to give this collection a grade. For a truly dynamic Marvel omnibus that celebrates not only Marvel's flagship character, but also the incredible talents of Joe Kelly, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Spider-Man by Joe Kelly Omnibus a B. This Spider-Man fan definitely considers this an above-average read, definitely some incredible gems from that Brand New Day era. I do think it would have been better read with all of the issues in between, especially building up the tension into and through the Gauntlet and into that Grim Hunt era, but we still have some fantastic stories here. You can read it without really knowing a ton about Spider-Man and still really have a good time. The fact that we got not only non-stop, but Savage Spider-Man and then some fun bits from the 90s, this book really has it all. I had so much fun going through this. It makes me optimistic for the future of Amazing Spider-Man under this writer, and yeah, I just had a blast with this. I do think it was a ton of fun. Let me know what you think. Are you picking up the Joe Kelly Spider-Man Omnibus? Have you picked it up? Have you read these issues before? Are you going to save out for the Brand New Day Volume 2 Omnibus? Anyway, let me know all of that in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching. A huge thank you again to Organic Price Books for sending over the review copy, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks everyone, bye.